Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to tier rank every single book I read so far this year. So it's obviously going to be the first 3 months of the year, so January, February, and March. So this is the tier ranking. So I have 7 tiers. I don't know if I'm going to use all of them, but I guess we'll see. First one is a favorite of the year. These are books that I really loved and I think have a high probability of ending up in my favorites of the year at the end of the year. Second tier is books I loved. Next are books I liked. Next are rereads, which I don't think I reread anything this year yet, which makes me sad because I do love rereading. Hopefully in the next 3 months I will be doing some rereading. Actually, I am currently rereading a book, but it's a very long one, so I haven't finished it yet. Then there are books that are just hot. Basically, I call this my Oh Hates McKay tier, where she uses this term a lot. No thought, no plot, just hot. That is basically that tier. Then books that were just fine, and then books I hated. So yeah, these are really in no particular order. I just put all the books I read. But I'm starting with 2 that I actually DNF'd. So the first one is A Princess Island Starts a Scandal. I don't have a DNF tier, so right now I'm just putting them at hated. I don't know for sure if I would hate this book, but I did like it so much that I DNF'd it. Usually it's books where I think they're going to be a 2-star at most that I DNF. This book, I just couldn't really get into it at all, unfortunately. So that's why it's in this tier. Next is Hyperbole and a Half, which I also hated. I didn't like this book. I don't know how much I got through it, but it's supposed to be very funny. I only laughed once, and that was at like the prologue. So this was just not for me, and it's for other people. It's just not for me. Irresistible by Melanie Harlow, I liked. I enjoyed this book. It was very short, which I think is one of the reasons why it's not loved. I enjoyed this couple. I enjoyed their romance, but now 2 months after, I don't find myself thinking about them a lot, and I haven't continued on with the series either, which that's not really a big indicator for me whether or not I like a book. But for this one, I enjoyed it, and I was enjoying it while I was reading it, but I haven't found myself thinking about it a lot, so that's why it's in liked. Pucked, however, is a favorite of the year. I have not stopped thinking about this book ever since I read it. I first gave it 4.5 stars, but since then I changed it to 5 stars. I really love this book. I love Alex. I love Violet. I constantly keep thinking about them, especially Alex has a part of my heart and soul. He's definitely a book boyfriend for me. I just really love this book. The Neighbor Favor, I also liked. I gave this book 4 stars. I did enjoy it, but there are parts of this book that were not really my favorite. But it's a book I would definitely recommend. So if you're interested, I would say definitely pick it up. Home for the Holidays, I think I'll put it at just hot. This doesn't really have a big plot. These holiday novellas by Lee Joko, she does spend time introducing the characters, but other than that, it's just them having sex. This is a step sibling romance, but they were never really they only lived together a year because their parents got together when they were in their senior years of high school, and they were actually they were almost a thing, but then his father started dating her mother, so that they had to stop whatever they were doing. And now their parents actually are getting a divorce, and now it's finally time to do all those fantasies that they had of each other while they were living together for that 1 year. So it was very hot, but it didn't really have a big plot. Okay, Only for the Week, I'm gonna put at liked. Technically, I could also put it at just hot, but since this did have a plot, and since a part of the plot was a part of the reason why this was not a 5, I have to put it at liked and not just at just hot, because I think if it was just hot, I would have given this 5 stars. This I enjoyed. I read this for my reading diverse romances. So I also read The Neighbor Favor for that as well. But this was a novella, and I just wanted to focus on the couple, but the author focused on anything but that. So, well, technically that's not true, but there was a big storyline of her sister being really mean to the heroine that I just wasn't that into, and I feel like it took away a lot of this book. Okay, so now, let's actually put these all together. So Sidetracked, Scarlet Angel, and The Risk. Okay, so I should actually, let me actually put this one here as well. So these are the first 3 books in the Mindfuck series. And The Risk I liked a little bit less than these 2 because I gave The Risk 4 stars, and Sidetracked and Scarlet Angel, I both gave them 5 stars. But the whole Mindfuck series overall is, I do feel like it's going to be a favorite of the year because I cannot stop myself from continuing on with this series. I really love Lana. I really love Logan. So yeah, I think this has a very, very high chance of ending up in my top whatever of the year because I really love this series. It's a serial killer and an FBI agent falling in love, and I'm eating it up. It is so good. It's very addictive, and I honestly, if this doesn't end up in my favorites of the year, then I don't know what happened because I am really, really loving this. The Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne is also a favorite of the year. This is a dark historical romances, which are 2 of my favorite genres. I really love this book. I read this for my vlog of reading like the most hyped books. And this one, I just cannot believe that I never really picked it up because I loved it so much. Once again, a book that I still find myself thinking about. Even though I read this in January, I really love this book. It was so good. This was such a great book. So yeah, definitely favorite of the year. Okay, so now for the 2 Sarah J. Maas book, part of the Crescent City world. Okay, so I think I'm going to put House of Sky and Breath at loved, and then I'm going to put House of Flame and Shadow at favorite of the year. I do have to say, this is probably because... Okay, so House of Sky and Breath, I actually read it for the first time this year, and I should have just read it when it came out, because I think if I had done so back then, it would have been a favorite of the year. But now, since I read House of Flame and Shadow right after it, I just forgot a lot about House of Sky and Breath. Comparing it to House of Flame and Shadow, this one is full of plot, and I just kept constantly turning the pages, whereas this one... Even though obviously it does have a plot, and Sarah J. Maas is one of my favorite authors, I just, in comparison, this one I just loved more. And since I read it in the same year, I cannot really put both of them in favorite of the year. So House of Flame and Shadow I really loved. I know it has gotten some pretty, like it has gotten a lot of criticism. I honestly don't know why, and I haven't read those criticisms because I don't really care to, but I really loved it. I really loved it. I thought it concluded this part of the series very well, and it was just like action scene after action scene after action scene, which I really enjoyed. The Witch Queen of Halloween was fine, and this makes me so sad to say because this is part of one of my favorite series, and this is my only 3 stars I've given that series, so that's why it was just fine. It was pretty disappointing for me. I didn't really enjoy it. Well, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a favorite of mine, and yeah, it was just fine for me, so that's why it's here. Sweet Vengeance, I liked. I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed it. This is a paranormal romance following a girl set out on revenge, and she summons this demon to help her set revenge. And this was just great. I think if you love the Mind F series, I think you're really gonna like this too. Although this is just one book, obviously, and it is paranormal book, so it doesn't really have a whole lot in common, but they both have a revenge aspect, of course. So I really enjoyed this book, and I would highly recommend it. The Serpent and the Wings of Night, I'm gonna also put at liked. I think I gave this 4 stars, and I think this was way too hyped for me. I liked it, obviously, but it wasn't my favorite, and I also didn't really like it. It wasn't 5 stars, so I couldn't put it at loved. I gave it 4 stars. I thought the world building was very great, and I did like a lot of things that were happening, but the romance just wasn't really my favorite, even though I did enjoy it while I was reading it, but it wasn't like this epic romance that I fell in love with, which that does need to happen for me to give a fantasy romance or a romantasy 5 stars. So that's why I'm just gonna put it at liked. The Rest of the Story by Tel Bauer, I'm gonna put at loved, but it might be a favorite of the year, depending on what happens. So I'm gonna put it at loved, and maybe I'll switch it around at the end of the video, but I really love this. This is a male-male romance that came out last year, and I really loved it. I love the writing style. I love the couple in here. I thought Tel Bauer did such a beautiful job with this book, and I also love the fact that this was, yes, it was a romance, but we also really fell in love with the entire hockey team. This was very much a underdog story that I really, really loved. Saga Volume 11, I loved. I love Saga. It's one of my favorite, well, it is my favorite comic book series, but it's also one of my favorite series of all time. I've been reading it for such a long time, and this was the latest installment, so obviously I had to read it. I cannot really tell you a whole lot about it since it is an 11th volume. Desperate Measures, I'm gonna put at just hot because it was mainly focused on them having sex and not a lot on everything else. Could this have been hotter? Yes. But I did enjoy Jasmine and Jafar. This is the first book in her series where you follow different villains getting their love interest. So that is, I love that premise. I just think that I'm going to love other books in this series more than I did Desperate Measures. Bride by Ali Hazelwood is a favorite of the year. I really, really love this book. I fell in love with this book. I thought this was such a great paranormal romance. I thought Ali did a wonderful job with this book. It's a werewolf romance, which you guys know I'm a sucker for those. I love werewolf romances. And this one was a great one. I really love the heroine too. Usually with paranormal romances, I tend to obviously love the guy more than the girl. But with this one, I really fell in love with I almost wanted to call her Misery. I thought she was great. I also loved Lo as well, but Misery was really the star of the show, in my opinion. So yeah, I'd highly, highly recommend this one. The Full Metal Alchemist, Volume 5 and 6. I think I gave them 4 stars, both of them. And so technically they should be at liked. And I did like them, but Volume 5, I wasn't really enjoying that much. And Volume 6 was the volume where I decided that I was just going to stop reading the series. I don't know why I don't love this as much as other people do. I do think that I'm going to watch the anime and see if maybe I'll get into it through that. But for now, the manga is just not really doing it for me. So that's why I put it at it was fine. Because obviously after these two, I decided to stop reading this series. So there's that. Divine Rivals, I loved. I really enjoyed this book. I definitely get the hype. I definitely see why a lot of people love this book. I loved it too. I love the mix of genres in here. This was a historical fiction, a fantasy, and a romance. And I love that. I love the reporting aspect in here as well. And I really love both characters. I loved Iris and I loved Roman. Roman, right? Yeah, I think so. I just really enjoyed it. And I actually have the second book already, and I think I'm going to be reading it in April, and I cannot wait. Magnolia Parks, I hate it. So this is another book I DNF'd, so I cannot tell you a whole lot about it because I only read like the first couple of chapters. But before I actually picked it up, I knew this was probably not going to be for me because I don't like this type of premise where you have like these rich socialites that don't really have a whole lot going on except being rich. And there's cheating in here as well, and I just didn't like it. And there was one aspect in here that did have me intrigued, which was the writing style, because a lot of people say that Jessa Hastings has this beautiful flowery writing style. While I was reading it, I wasn't enjoying the writing style either, so that's why I just cut my losses and DNF'd it. A Love Song for Ricky Wilde, I loved. I really love this book. This is a paranormal romance that takes place during a leap year. Actually, this year's leap year. I really enjoyed it. I love both characters. This was also a mix between a romance, or a contemporary romance, a paranormal romance, and a historical fiction. And I really enjoyed that. I love that mix so much. So it does remind me a little bit of Divine Rivals in that way. I enjoyed myself immensely while reading this book. So yeah, I read this one for my reading new releases video. So I'll actually try and link all the videos where I read these books in the comments below or in the description below. So if you are interested in more of my thoughts on any of these books, definitely check those videos out. If You Hate Me by Helena Hunting, I'm going to put it in loved, but this might also be a favorite of the year. Although I have to say, comparing If You Hate Me to Pucked, I did definitely enjoy Pucked a little bit more. So I think that's why this should stay at loved. I really love this book. Once again, I do think this book has gotten some mixed reviews, and I can definitely see why some people would not like this book, but this book was everything that I love. I loved it so much. So that's why I'm going to put it at loved here. Keep Her Safe was fine. I gave this 3 stars. This was disappointing because this is a bodyguard actress romance, and I usually love the bodyguard trope, but this one just didn't work for me. I didn't really enjoy this book, so that's why it was fine. I mean, I enjoyed the first half, but she made some decisions. So she made some decisions here that didn't work for me because they got together very, very early on, which made the rest of the story just kind of boring. And there was this whole stalker plot line that turned into this cartoon villain, and I could see from a mile off who the stalker was, and the cartoon villain aspect, I just wasn't really enjoying the second half, so that's why it was fine. This Could Be Us was also fine. Unfortunately, I had such high hopes because this is my first full-length Kennedy Ryan, and like I said, I really thought that I was gonna love this, and unfortunately I didn't. I mean, I did enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 stars, so this might actually be liked as well, but there was just a lot of things in here that prevented me from loving it because this was not really a romance in my opinion. It was very much women's fiction. That is just not my genre. The Fiancé farce was fine as well. I thought this was way too long. Even though I enjoyed the scenes we got with them, there was a big part in the middle that was boring and nothing was happening. So that took away from the book. If this was shorter, I think I would have really liked it. And there was a secondary love story in here that I was a little bit more intrigued by than our main love story, which obviously you don't want that. So that's why it was fine. Stars in Your Eyes by Case and Calendar, I also loved. I do, like, the first 3 in this category, I can see being a favorite of the year because a couple books in here, especially Pucked, I didn't think, like, if I did a tier ranking in January, this wouldn't have been a favorite of the year. It's because I kept thinking about this book throughout February and March that it ended up being a favorite of the year for me. We Could Be So Good by Kat Sebastian, I liked. I really like this book. Can I actually just remove the reread? Yeah, let's just delete it because there was no rereading going on. Yeah, We Could Be So Good, I really loved, or I really liked. The thing is, so this is another male-male romance, and I did enjoy it, and I did enjoy seeing them together. And in fact, it's funny that it's below Divine Rivals because this also follows a reporter as a character. Well, 2 reporters technically. And you see them in the newspaper, well, working for the newspaper as well. So once again, if you love Divine Rivals, I do think you're going to love We Could Be So Good as well because, and especially if you liked the reporting aspect, because this We Could Be So Good definitely reminded me of Divine Rivals. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, but there was no real plot in this book in We Could Be So Good. And so that is why I couldn't give it a 5 because it was very easy for me to put down and was not really that intriguing for me. Like while I was reading it, I was enjoying it and I did enjoy the romance, but there was nothing really pushing the plot forward. And I was also kind of slumping while reading this. So there's that. The Coldest Winter by Brittany Cherry is definitely loved. I do have to say, as I finished it, because I read this one for my diverse reading vlog, which I also read these 3 for the rest of the story and Stars in Your Eyes. When I just finished it, I honestly thought this was going to be a favorite of the year. I really loved it. I was so intrigued. It's actually one of my favorites I read for that vlog. But as time has gone on, I haven't found myself thinking about this book a lot. So that's why for now, it can't be a favorite of the year because, like I said, I haven't found myself thinking about it like Pucked, like The Highwayman, like Bride. And I have, like, if I look at these other books, I have thought about If You Hate Me way more than The Coldest Winter. So there's that. Coming Home, I liked. I enjoyed this. This is a novella and it's only out on audiobooks. Those things kind of worked against it. I'm not really an audiobook girly, even though I'm trying to be, because that's one of my goals, to listen to more audiobooks. So far I've not really succeeded in that goal, but this is the only one I actually have listened to. And even though I did enjoy it, it's an audiobook and I don't know why. I think it's just my brain. It cannot really comprehend audiobooks for some reason. Although I do have to say, I do remember a lot about it. So I did comprehend enough of it. But I don't know. I don't think a book that I listen to on audiobook can ever be my favorite. I don't know, maybe I will be surprised one day, but for now, it was just too short for me to really fall in love with this love story. So far, Kennedy Ryan, I need a good one by her, and I do think that everything else she's published is going to be a favorite of mine, so I just have to read a couple more books by her. Praise by Sarah Kate, I liked. I do have to say this series was very, very hyped for me, and this one fell flat a little bit. I do have to say this is an ex-boyfriend's dad romance, and that is just not my trope. I don't love that. Although I do have to say with this one, she did a good job in that he was really struggling with the fact that he was getting together with his son's ex, and I do like that. Like, if you're gonna have an ex-boyfriend's dad book, I want him to feel bad and kind of hate himself a little bit for doing that. So she did a good job on this. I do have to say, I think other books in this series are going to be my favorite. I think the MMF one is going to be a favorite, the stepbrother, and I think the story of his son, Bo, with his friend is also going to be a favorite. So I think I just need to read more books in this series, and I don't think Praise is going to be my favorite. But I did enjoy it, and it was very hot. God of Malice, ooh, another book that I've been thinking a lot about. I think this is going to be a favorite of the year because, like I said, I cannot stop thinking about this book. All I want to do is continue on with this series, but I'm pacing myself a little bit because the final one comes out in August and I kind of want to read one a month. So that means April, May, June, and July. I need to read the next 4. So I'm ready for the 6th one. I really enjoyed God of Malice. It reminded me very much of Untouchable, which was one of my favorite books I read last year. I really enjoyed this. It is very unhinged and very dark, and the main male character, I cannot even call him a hero, is very morally gray. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be for everyone, but it was definitely for me. And last but most certainly not least was Binding 13. I'm debating because I really loved Binding 13, but currently I'm reading Keeping 13 and it is a struggle. I'm very much struggling to get into it because I think this duet is way too long. Like, it does not need to be this long. Like, I think she could have told this entire story in 800 pages. Instead, she's taking 1,200 pages, and I don't think it's necessary. And because of my experience with Keeping 13, this cannot really be a favorite for me. I gave this 4.5 stars, and I have not changed my rating like I did for Pucked, because I even felt, even though I did enjoy, very much loved Binding 13, that book even felt too long for me. So yeah, it's loved, which is good still, because yeah, I would highly recommend it. But like I said, I'm struggling with Keeping 13, and the reason I'm struggling is because it feels too long. So there's that. Let me look at the loved. Yeah, I think I'm good with having all of these and loved. And these 3 are technically part of the same series, and when I talk about my favorites, I'm going to talk about the Mind F series in total. So I'm going to lump these 3 together, meaning I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 favorites of the year so far, which is good because we're only in the first 3 months of the year. So if we're going to go on that trajectory, I might have 24 books I loved in 2024, but I usually tend to stick with less books than like do the whole 24 books I loved in 2024 or 23 books I loved in 2023. Last year I had 15 favorites, so I had 9 books I loved, 8 books I liked, 2 books that were just hot, 6 books that were fine, and 3 books I hated, which I do have to say all of these were all DNFs. So I had a really good reading year so far because the 3 books that I hated were books I DNF'd, which means I didn't spend a whole lot of time reading them. And these are all books that I liked or loved, and they obviously, you can see that's way more than the other categories. So like I said, I had a great reading year. I would recommend any of the books in these 3 categories. So definitely check all of them out if you have not done so already. Obviously, I started a lot of series this year, so I really need to continue on with the Mind F series, obviously, but I do think that I'm going to finish the Mind F series in April for sure. I want to continue on with the Pucked series and the Highwayman, the next book in that, and the Legacy of the Gods, but I'm definitely going to do that because I want to read the 6th book when it comes out. Yeah, and I'm currently reading Keeping 13, but like I said, struggling my way through it. So hopefully, I don't know, for now it feels like a 3, which is sad because Binding 13 was almost a favorite of the year for me. But yeah, like I said, all the other ones, I just need, like I said, I started a lot of series, so I'm going to continue them throughout the rest of the year. So that is good because if I love the first book in a series, I'm going to love the rest of the books as well. So I foresee myself having a lot of favorites this year. So definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. Also, I would really love to know some of your favorite books that you read this year so far. Let me know, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did, and thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.